How did California run out of water? Can't they just use seawater from the ocean instead? Why was a major reservoir shut down, and what are they doing about it? Today, we're answering these questions surrounding the recent wildfire disasters in California. You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, so I'm going to do my best to address some of these rumors that have been going around. And I myself am no wildfire expert by any means, but I am a commercial diver, and we do have to dive in and make repairs on these reservoirs, potable water tanks, pumps, hydroelectric dams, even sewer systems. So as inland commercial divers, you know, we have a general understanding of these typical potable water systems and how they work. So let's dive right into it. Now, to date, there have been 37,000 acres and 12,000 structures destroyed. 153,000 LA residents are under evacuation, and at least 26 people, unfortunately, have perished in these fires. So if you look here on Google Maps, we could see the Palisades fire here. The Hearst fire is up here, it's further north, and then the Eaton fire is further east. Now, keep in mind, whenever they're talking about these harsh winds, they're actually not coming from the coast, but they're actually coming down this mountain or hill range right here and blowing towards the coast. So just keep that in mind, that it's extremely dry air that's coming down from the sort of this desert, and it's coming downhill down towards the shore, the coastline here. Now, I also took the liberty of mapping out all of the reservoir locations. So if you look here, the Santa Ynez Reservoir was actually less than a mile from the epicenter of the Palisades fire. So it was pretty much right in the heart of it, right? Well, the thing is, this 117,000 gallon reservoir, this is by far the biggest one in the area. It actually was out of commission. It was down for repairs, is what they said. And we're going to get into those repairs and why and what they had going on there. But let's just run some measurements here and just take a look at some things. So to run out the coast, they've got to go downhill down here, and they got to go 2 miles out to the coast if they're going to pull seawater. And then, to my knowledge, the next closest reservoirs that they have are the Stone Canyon Reservoir, which is about 8 miles, and the Encino Reservoir, which is about 6.5 miles. Those are the next closest reservoirs. Now, as we'll hear, they did have 3 1 million gallon water tanks in the area that they were refilling to fight the Palisades fire, but it's not nearly enough, as you guys will hear in a little bit. Now, the other fires that are still developing are the Eaton fire. This is the next biggest one. And so the Eaton fire here is kind of at the bottom of this hillside. And then this is Hanson Lake. This is the next closest body of water that they're using to fight the Hearst fire over here. So how did California run out of water? Well, these wildfires obviously placed an enormous strain on the Los Angeles water systems. Most water systems supplying neighborhoods rely on gravity-fed tanks like water towers to maintain pressure. Now, typically these water towers are almost constantly being refilled. They use gravity to supply the community, and they act as a buffer between the water system and then the spike in water draws that you'll typically see in the mornings as families are getting ready for work and school, and then back in the evenings when they return. So there's a big water draw in the morning, there's a big water draw in the evening. So like midday and then at night is when those water towers will slowly build back up. If there wasn't a water tower, everyone would just drain the system, since they're just pulling straight out of the system, and you wouldn't have enough water pressure to run your showers, sinks, things like that. So now, in addition, the system was being strained by 4 times the amount it is designed to supply. So the system just simply couldn't keep up with the demand. They were trying to fight wildfires with residential potable water systems. Now, you also need independent water tanks and reservoirs, which LA had, but the thing was, the only reservoirs they had available were 3 1 million gallon water tanks. That's it. That's the backup. That's all the reserve that they had. Now, the Pacific Palisades fire was first reported on Tuesday, January 7th at 10:30 a.m. The first LA Department of Water and Power water tank ran out at 4:45 p.m. The second one ran out at about 8:30 p.m. and then the third one finally ran out at 3 a.m. So the system didn't even last 24 hours before reaching its full capacity. Now, in addition to the water being used to fight the fire by the firefighters, it was also obviously being used by citizens to fight these fires, whether they're using sprinkler systems or garden hoses to try and fight these fires. But in addition to this, one thing that no one's really talking about is I would just have to assume that these houses were blowing water lines upon being demolished by these fires. That is, unless you go and manually shut off the water to your home, the pipes in these fires are going to melt, and then they're going to be essentially an open line that's draining water. And the LADWP does address this, which we'll look at later. But, this further adds another reason to why the water system just couldn't keep up and build up enough pressure to fight the fires. Now, these neighborhoods are being leveled in a blink of an eye, and so I doubt that everyone had the presence of mind to go and shut off these water systems to their homes and while you're trying to rush out and save your family. And it's also likely that some of the homes were simply just unattended during evacuation and no one was home. So it's possible that there may be some sort of like automatic shut off, but given the magnitude of this fire, I would have to assume that there are just some open lines that were damaged in the process of these during this whole event. Now, to support the efforts, they were using 20 water tankers. They take 30 minutes to fill and 3,000 gallons to 4,000 gallons of water, and then they'll take those, run them uphill, and get them closer to the front lines there where the firefighters are.
I want to continue the thought process that Mark had about water supply in Palisades. We had a tremendous demand on our system in the Palisades. We pushed the system to the extreme. 4 times the normal demand was seen for 15 hours straight, which lowered our water pressure. We were pushing 75 CFS on our trunk line to try to keep water pressures in the system. If there's a message you take away from me today, is I need our customers to really conserve water, not just in the Palisade area, but the whole system, because the fire department needs the water to fight the fires, and we're fighting a wildfire with urban water systems, and that is really challenging. What happened in Palisades? We have 3 large water tanks, about 1 million gallons each. We ran out of water in the first tank at about 4:45 p.m. yesterday. We ran out of water on the second tank about 8:30 p.m. and the third tank about 3 a.m. this morning. Those tanks help with the pressure on the fire hydrants and the hills of Palisades. And because we were pushing so much water in our trunk line, and so much water was being used before it can get to the tanks, we were not able to fill the tanks fast enough. So the consumption of water was faster than we can provide water in our trunk line. So I want to make sure that you understand there's water on the trunk line. It just cannot get up the hill because we cannot fill the tanks fast enough. What are we doing now? We're sending about 20 water tanks from our construction crews full of water to support the fire department. We identify other areas in our system where our tankers can refill. It takes about 30 minutes to refill about 4,000 gallons of water, and we're constantly moving that water to the fire department to get them as much water as we can.
Now, she did mention a trunk line in that clip, and this is actually from the LADWP website. And here they're discussing the DeSoto trunk line. It says here that the trunk line was originally placed in service in 1917 and is a riveted steel pipe ranging from 24 to 52 inches in diameter. So if you guys are wondering what a trunk line is, that gives you an idea of how large it is. And it says that trunk lines provide the transmission capacity to move large amounts of water from tanks and reservoirs to distribution mainline pipes throughout the city. So essentially, this is a big pipe that's going to get a large volume of water down to these neighborhoods as quickly as possible. Now, here's a statement from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. They have put out this statement a few times now in what seems to be a deflection of accusations, essentially kind of like in a political blame game between different levels of government and agencies in California, which you guys are going to see some of the blame that's getting tossed around here. And we'll touch on that more here in a few minutes. Correcting misinformation about LADWP's water system. Any assertion that fire hydrants in the Pacific Palisades were broken before the Palisades fire is misleading and false. LADWP works with LA Fire Department, who is responsible for inspecting fire hydrants citywide. LA Department of Water and Power repaired every fire hydrant needing repairs as reported by the LA Fire Department inspectors. LADWP's fire hydrant repair list was current and updated, and all reported fire hydrants were fully operational in the Pacific Palisades and in LA's West Side communities prior to the fire, which I don't think anyone is necessarily saying that the fire hydrants were broken. I mean, that might have been some sort of local rumor, but for the most part, I think we understand that the fire hydrants just were getting strained far too much. And they go on to say no power was lost to the LADWP pump stations during the fire. These are the pump stations that are pumping the water uphill to the reservoirs, and water supply remained strong to the area. Water pressure in the system was lost due to unprecedented and extreme water demand to fight the wildfire without aerial support. This impacted our ability to refill the water tanks supplying the Palisades fire, causing the loss of suction pressure. This impacted 20% of the hydrants in the area, mostly in higher elevations. As soon as LADWP identified the risk of losing water in the tanks and water pressure in the system, we immediately deployed potable water tankers to sustain support for firefighting efforts. Now, as you may have heard, there was a reservoir that was taken out of service that would have been critical to supporting the firefight in the Palisades. But why? LADWP in the same statement states, LADWP was required to take the Santa Ynez Reservoir out of service to meet safe drinking water regulations. To commission the support and resources to implement repairs to Santa Ynez, LADWP is subject to the city competitive bidding process, which requires time, which it does, but this reservoir has been shut down since February 2024, and we're going to get into why that's a little ridiculous. The water system serving the Pacific Palisades area and all of Los Angeles meets federal and state fire codes for urban development and housing. LADWP built the Pacific Palisades water system beyond the requirements to support the community's typical needs. As we face the impacts of climate change and build climate resilience, we welcome a review and update of these codes and requirements if the city water systems will be used to fight extreme wildfires. LADWP is initiating our own investigation about water resiliency and how we can enhance our posture to respond to the impacts of climate change. So they claim that the reservoir was down to meet water quality regulations, which is a bit ironic because the only maintenance that it actually needed was repairs to the cover, which the cover for the reservoir, if you guys have seen those before, they keep out birds, they keep out debris, and they also protect the water from UV rays. So it inhibits biogrowth, essentially, limits like algae and things like that from growing in the water and different bacterias. Now, that was the only repair that I could find that was scheduled. All right, now in February 2024, the reservoir was shut down. And then finally in November 2024, we can see a contract was awarded to Layfield USA Corporation for repairs to the floating cover in the Santa Ynez Reservoir. Now, this same company did the same repairs for, I think it was like $10,000 or $20,000 cheaper back in 2022. So, with that being said, being that this same repair contract or something similar had just been performed by the same company 2 years ago, one would assume that the LADWP would know what to expect and plan ahead so that there's minimal shutdown time to such a critical reservoir. I mean, after all, it was literally less than 1 mile from the epicenter of the Pacific Palisades, and it had 40 times the amount of water than what they had available between those 3 other reservoirs that they were running out, that they ran out so quickly of in 24 hours. Now we'll get into what they're doing now, but let's look at 2 glaring letters first. These are going to be pretty eye-opening. All right, you guys. So this first letter comes from Kristin Crowley. She's the fire chief for the Los Angeles Fire Department. Now, keep in mind, this was written on December 4th, 2024. Okay? And then as we can see here, it was issued or filed on December 17th, 2024. Okay? So this is a very recent letter. Now, I'll leave a link down below in the description if you guys want to take a look at this and read through the entire 21-page document. But this opening statement, this summary here, sums it up pretty good. So let's just read through this. So she says, the Los Angeles City Fire Department, LA Fire Department, is facing unprecedented operational challenges due to the elimination of critical civilian positions and a $7 million reduction in overtime variable staffing hours, also known as V hours. These budgetary reductions have adversely affected the department's ability to maintain core operations such as technology and communication infrastructure, payroll processing, training, fire prevention, and community education. In addition to these impacts, the reduction in V hours has severely limited the department's capacity to pay attention, prepare for, train for, and respond to large-scale emergencies, including wildfires, earthquakes, hazardous material incidents, and large public events. Specialized programs and resources such as air operations, tactical EMS units, disaster response, and community emergency response teams, also known as CERT, C-E-R-T, which rely heavily on V hours, are now at risk of reduced effectiveness. This report provides an in-depth analysis of these cascading impacts, underscoring the critical need for resource restoration to ensure operational readiness, firefighter safety, and the delivery of high-quality public service. She pretty much calls it out and says that we're already under a lot of stress, and you guys just cut our budget by $7 million. What are you thinking? You know, when we're highly prone to wildfires and earthquakes, and you're cutting our budget by even more. She's pretty much saying, what are you guys doing? Now this letter was sent to Mayor Karen Bass, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. And like I said, it's 21 pages. And if you guys want to go take a look through all this, then I'll leave a link down below if you want to take a look. So guys, this is clearly a call to help to Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass after a $7 million budget cut that almost directly affects the emergency response to large-scale emergencies such as these wildfires. So this is going to go down as one of the most costly wildfires in U.S. history, and pretty much we're literally talking about like penny pinching millions, which is now going to cost our country billions of dollars. Not to mention citizens' homes, their families, their health, and it's even taken lives. So this is quite a shame. Now, I think Kristin Crowley, as the fire chief, that was a pretty warranted and valid letter that she sent in the study that they presented to Mayor Karen Bass. Now, we're getting letters like this from Gavin Newsome. He put out a statement via Twitter on January 10th, essentially what I would call kind of kicking the political football back to LADWP, Department of Water and Power. I mean, it sort of comes off like he's kind of acting like he cares while simultaneously blaming LADWP and calling for an independent investigation. But I mean, the bottom line is it's his state and he's responsible. But let's just take a look at this letter. I'll let you guys decide for yourself here. I'll just read through it real quick. Ms. Quinones and Mr. Pastrella, from the moment firestorms erupted in Los Angeles County on Tuesday, January 7th, it was clear our public infrastructure would be put under tremendous strain. The horrific hurricane-force winds and dry conditions have produced an unprecedented urban wildlands disaster that has pushed all of our resources to the limits, which is true. This is essentially, guys, this is the perfect storm. Like, to be fair, they knew it was coming, but at the same time, this was just the perfect storm of winds, a severe drought that California had earlier this year. But he goes on to say, the ongoing reports of the loss of water pressure to some local fire hydrants during the fires and the reported unavailability of water supplies from the Santa Ynez Reservoir are deeply troubling to me and the community. While water supplies from local fire hydrants are not designed to extinguish wildfires over large areas, or losing supplies from fire hydrants likely impaired the effort to protect some homes and evacuation corridors. We need answers to how that happened. Therefore, I have directed state water and firefighting officials to prepare an independent after incident report examining the causes of lost water supply and water pressure in the municipal water systems during the fire events, and to identify measures that local governments can implement to provide adequate water supply for emergency response during catastrophic events. So again, it comes off that yes, I care, we need answers, but we're pinning this on the local governments is what he's saying. And maybe it is up to the local governments to figure this out, but at the same time, it's something that's going to be ripping through your state. I think that this should certainly be a much bigger issue than just local governments handling these things. I mean, this is going to be the costliest wildfire in American history. So for something like that to be on the backs of local governments is honestly, that's a bit irresponsible in my opinion. He goes on to say, I request that LA Department of Water and Power and Los Angeles County officials swiftly prepare a comprehensive review examining their local preparation and response procedures to ensure available water supply for emergencies and document any causes of the loss of water pressure and unavailability of water supplies. I am requesting that you fully and transparently share information and records for the state's after incident review. So again, he's kind of pointing the finger at LA Department of Water and Power, which, I mean, yeah, these are their systems, so they do need to provide that information. But as you'll see, it seems like they're restricted by regulations, and that's what they're pointing to. When you have regulations and certain procedures that are forcing the government to work slow, well, I mean, this is kind of what you're going to get when there are just far too many regulations for something like a simple cover that needs to be repaired. That should have been something that was labeled as I work and do contracts with the government. There are workarounds that can be used, that you have to use language like this is an emergency repair. That would allow a quick turnaround. That would allow different agencies like Army Corps of Engineers or the Fish and Wildlife, whoever might have a say in the permits that are needed, that would give them a sense of urgency to get like that cover turned around quickly instead of it being shut down for a full year. It was supposed to go back in service in February. And then he just says here, for the full technical capacity of the state for disaster preparation, response, and recovery, as well as to examine local public agency actions throughout this catastrophe and to learn from the lessons of this tragedy. Yeah, okay. And he CC's Major Karen Bass. Now, California is often criticized for its abusive handling of taxes, overcharging, overspending, not prioritizing where it really matters.
Get to the big question, the budget. There's so much talk about it. It was cut 17 million. It was cut this. It wasn't cut at all, according to one newspaper. Was your budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025 cut?
I can tell you, I'm going to even go back further than that. Again, since day one, we've identified huge gaps in regard to our service delivery and our ability from our firefighters, boots on the ground, to do their jobs. Since day one, this is my third budget as we're going into 25-26. What I can tell you is we are still understaffed, we're still under-resourced, and we're still underfunded. So with that, whether it's 7 million, 10 million.
But was the budget cut, Chief?
Yes, it was cut, and it did impact our ability to provide service.
All right, so now we're going to go over some common questions regarding saltwater and using it in fire equipment. So claim number 1, saltwater destroys fire equipment. So saltwater can corrode pumps and pipes over time, but it's not a catastrophic issue that many are implying. If that were the case, then trucks in the Midwest that drive all over salt-covered roads would just disintegrate within a year. So honestly, it's not that big of an issue. Modern fire trucks and equipment are designed to handle tough conditions. Okay, so even for us in the commercial diving industry, we use pressure washers and trash pumps and run salt water through them, even though they're just normal pressure washers, normal trash pumps that you would use on land. But you know what we do afterwards? We run fresh water through them. We flush them out thoroughly with fresh water, and sometimes we use corrosion inhibitors as well to help prevent any sort of corrosion to the material. But in most cases, a freshwater flush is going to suffice. Again, we're looking at potentially millions of dollars to cover extra maintenance in terms of flushing out these systems or replacing seals or, maybe an impeller on these fire trucks, versus billions of dollars in fire damage. So fire departments in coastal cities like New York and even as close as Long Beach use seawater effectively. Why doesn't Los Angeles? Now, can you just draw water straight from the ocean and run it into your existing fire hydrant system? No, but similar to what San Francisco did is they now have a backup network of fire hydrants which pump water from the San Francisco Bay. So I imagine Los Angeles is going to implement something similar to this after this disaster. Now, it's also going to be extremely expensive, but it's going to provide another layer of safety in fire prevention if they were to do that. So the next claim is that saltwater is less effective at cooling fires, so that's why they don't use it. Saltwater absorbs heat nearly as well as fresh water, and while scientists could maybe come up with some kind of minor difference or calculate some minor difference, in the real world, a gallon of seawater is going to be far better than nothing. If saltwater extinguishes a fire, then it's doing its job. And in fact, they turned to planes that are drawing salt water and dumping them on the fires as we speak. The next claim is they can't use salt water because it will harm the environment. Again, look, salt water can cause short-term damage to the plant's soil composition, maybe raising pH levels, but it doesn't create some kind of barren wasteland. Well, just think about it, guys. The coastal vegetation thrives despite being exposed to constant salty air 24/7, 365. So the real environmental threat that we need to be worried about is the toxic ash and the chemicals left behind from like burning homes, cars, things of that nature. It's not by any means the salt in the seawater that we should be worried about. It's toxic exposure from all these burning chemicals and burning materials. That's what we should be worried about. Saltwater will cause short-term damage, nothing like all these chemicals that are being burned. The next claim is that it's logistically difficult to use seawater, and that's why they aren't using it. Well, yes and no. So the fireboat Vigilance is owned by the Port of Long Beach. It's 108 feet long. The ship has 10 water cannons, and it can pump 41,000 gallons per minute, which is more than 4 times as much as its predecessors. And the cannons are able to throw water up to 236 feet in the air and up to 580 feet away. So this thing can push some water. Now, according to Sal Mercogliano with What's Up with Shipping, he was a fireman for 25 years, and he also works in the maritime industry. So this is kind of his a sweet spot where he has some knowledge here. So he's saying that these fireboats can do much more than just throw water, but they have the capability to pump water out of the ocean directly into 6-inch diameter hoses back up to shore, where the fire trucks will be stationed in sort of a chain gang where they can pump water uphill manually, if that makes sense. So the other option is they can pump that water back to shore and then pump the water into potable water dip tanks of various sizes, where even helicopter pilots can perform water pickups. They can also pump them into trucks that is going to take the water and transport it further inland to other drop-off points, potentially reservoirs. And then in the case of the Palisades fire, where it was right on shore, it would have been nice to have these capabilities. And I think we should be questioning, why wasn't it part of their emergency preparedness plan? Now, furthermore, Canada does have a contract with California, which dates back to the 1990s, where they sent these super suckers to help fight the wildfires in California. Currently, there were 2 that were sent down, and there are more on their way being sent from Quebec. These planes are CL-145 planes, and they're built by Bridger Aerospace. So how it works is they fly in at 100 miles an hour. They get down to water level. Then they have little scoops underneath, and then they scoop up 18,000 gallons of seawater in about 14 seconds. Then fly off, and then they go and dump it on the fires. Now, unfortunately, one of the only 2 planes that they currently have was grounded due to a hole in its wing from some jackwagon flying their drone in its path. Now, the FAA released a statement on January 9th stating they have launched an investigation into this, and that this is a federal crime punishable up to 12 months in prison and a civil penalty of up to $75,000. Not only was this dangerous, but this incident certainly causes further damage to people's homes and lives, so I hope they catch this person soon. What is California doing about the fires now? Well, so obviously you've seen firefighters from all over the country coming together to fight these fires in California. In addition, this is the most recent statement from LADWP as of January 12th at 5 p.m. They state, supporting the fire response, LADWP is taking every measure available to us to restore water pressure to the Palisades area portion of its water supply system in advance of more high winds in the weather forecast, which we'll take a look at the forecast here in a second. Over 8.5 billion gallons of water are available in 3 open-air LADWP reservoirs and are being actively used by CAL FIRE and Los Angeles Fire Department to support their aerial attack. They will remain a critical part of the firefight and are fully available. LADWP's Hollywood Reservoir, Lower Stone Canyon, and Encino reservoirs have been critical in protecting lives and property throughout the firefight. LADWP is supporting firefighting efforts with 19 water tankers, each holding 2,000 to 4,000 gallons, running continuously to supply water to firefighters. They'll keep supplying water ahead of forecasted high winds and continue until the fires are fully contained. And then they have an update here on restoring water pressure to the Palisades area. And they're going to touch here on kind of what we were talking about earlier. So over 200 employees are working on this effort. They are working around the clock to shut off services that were destroyed by fire and taking the steps needed to restore system pressure by fixing customer and distribution system leaks and shut off all fire hydrants that were left open. These measures will boost water pressure throughout the system, restoring flow to our 3 1 million gallon storage tanks at higher elevation and all neighborhood pipes in the Palisades area. This process requires multiple steps at elevations to charge the pipes with water, identify leaks, and then repair or cap services. Once enough repairs are made, the pressure will be strong enough to refill the tanks, which takes 8 to 12 hours. There is plenty of water available from LADWP and regional sources coming through our large pipes serving the area to refill the tanks. As of 5 p.m. today, LADWP has shut off over 4,200 residential and commercial connections to homes and businesses. So that to me says, like we were speaking about earlier, that there are at least 4,200 open pipes or pipes that were open, and then they had to just shut off the water supply going to that property because the fire had damaged those pipes and they were just leaking water. So that's currently what they're working on right now, is going through and shutting those systems off or capping them off if repairs can't be made. So just another thing to think about, all of these neighborhoods is not just the homes, but also that electricity lines, the water lines that were damaged. There's going to be a lot to repair here, pretty much from the ground up. So now this tweet was just put out from the National Weather Service in Los Angeles. It says, heads up, strong, locally damaging northeast east winds will affect West LA County and much of Ventura County through Wednesday. Critical fire weather is expected, so please have multiple ways of getting notifications in case of new fires and prepare ahead of time. So they have issued a particularly dangerous situation, a PDS. This is a red flag warning. It says extreme risk, take immediate action. So this is the highest level warning that they can issue. I've never seen one of these in my life. So this is the highest level warning that National Weather Service can issue to our country. So just keep that in mind when we're thinking about the magnitude and the severity of this entire situation. So the timing is going to be from Tuesday 4 a.m. This is January 13th, Tuesday 4 a.m. until noon on Wednesday, January 14th. Do not do anything that could spark a fire. Have multiple ways to receive evacuation information, and then visit www.fire.ca.gov/repair and develop a wildfire action plan. The last point it makes here is that it says peak winds for this next event will be weaker than those last week. Nevertheless, winds will be strong enough to potentially cause explosive fire growth. And it says weather is supposed to be between 45 mile an hour to 75 mile an hour gusts, locally damaging, 8 to 15% relative humidity. So weaker winds, but if anyone is down there in California, or if you have family down there in California, make sure that you're getting this message out to them and that they're aware of these risks. Yeah, be safe down there. Now, let's just take a quick look at the upcoming weather report straight from National Weather Service. This is the one that I use to check weather, and it's usually going to be the most accurate and most up-to-date. So they have the red flag warning, like we just talked about, going through Wednesday. So it's saying Monday, January 13th is going to be around 15 to 25 mile an hour winds, gusts as high as 35 miles per hour. And then Monday through Tuesday night, it looks like the winds are going to be around 20 to 25 miles an hour with gusts, again, as high as 35. And then if we look at the rest of the week here, it looks like it's going to slow down. But if you guys are ever using this and you're near water, a little trick that we always use to get accurate wind readings is you click on the water when you're choosing your location, and what that'll bring up is the wind in knots. So for Wednesday, looks like it starts to die down Wednesday night. It says winds are going to be around 10 knots, and then 5 knots Thursday and Friday. So it looks like it's going to start dying down. Now, I'm going to leave you guys with the most recent video from Los Angeles County Fire Department. They're going to go over the current status, the progress, and their plans moving forward. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful. Thanks again, you guys. I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the comments. Please dive safe. And just remember, they're going to try and politicize this issue, and they're going to try and divide and conquer and use this as a political football. Don't let them divide you guys. Do your own research. Let's come together as a country, get this figured out. We as a people are stronger together. So here's Los Angeles County Fire Department.
Good morning, Jeremiah Whitwer, Operations Section Chief for the Palisades incident. We're going to give you a current situational update, starting off with the acreage for the fire, 23,707 acres. Current containment's right at 11%. So we're going to start in the top end of the map over here. We're going to call this the Mulholland Drive up top. Crews did a really good job securing that, getting some containment line across the top, and fire was holding within the footprint yesterday. So we did have that northeastern wind that helped pull that fire back into the main body of the fire yesterday and gave some progress to the crews. One of our biggest concerns was the Mandeville Canyon yesterday. So we searched a lot of resources in there. The fire creeped down to Mandeville Canyon Road right behind the structures, and the crews were in there all night yesterday from the ground resources and the aerial show that was going on. Multiple helicopters were helping, and the fixed wing. We had our VLATs, the very large air tankers that are in there assisting with that. The direct line was going in through the night. That is hand line directly on the fire line, and crews were doing well in there. Coming around down here in the Palisades area, across the PCH and into town. Very limited calls for service last night. You'll notice the work of our crews in there mopping up, patrolling around all those structures, trying to hit every little hot spot. As the winds picked up today, we may see a little bit more activity in there, so we're trying to seek out a lot of those hot spots. We're able to use the IR capabilities from our UASs around and really focus on some of those hot spots and identify those for our crews. Coming across down the PCH here, limited activity was happening yesterday. You notice we've continued to add some of this black line. That black line is the containment on the fire, so we're looking really good down here. Up here in the Montanito area, crews actively got in there and went direct on some of the hand line, and we're extinguishing and getting deeper in there. We're trying to get a couple hundred feet into that control line, mopping up around those structures. As we get in here into the Topanga Canyon area, we did have some concerns last night. We did have a little bit of a slop over. You'll see right in here in the Z on the map, that Division Zulu. Fire started to approach down, and we had some concerns in the Fernwood area. We were able to mitigate some of those situations last night, and it was looking really well. So overall progression with the fire crews yesterday, we did really well. One of the things I'd like to remind all the residents, UAS operations. So when we're talking about drones on the fire, anytime that a civilian puts up a drone in our airspace, we're unable to fly our aircraft. So if you're flying, it means we can't. So we're trying to do our job out there. So I appreciate everybody respect the no drone flights in the fire area. That'll conclude our operational briefing for today.